Okay, so let's talk about everything from the beginning to the end with the pre-shot routine. We'll start with a little variation, maybe a difference in what we see with a two-handed approach, just in getting ready to set up. Now, when you're getting ready, just like anybody else, you're going to have a series of things you go through to get yourself prepared. It's going to be picking up the ball, wiping off, doing some things that are just getting you mentally and physically ready to go. What may be a little different about your particular two-handed approach that's different in the pre-shot routine that may not be in the traditional one-handed approach?
Different for me is I have to dry off both hands. Most everybody else only has to keep one, so the hand dryer is definitely a big key at bowling centers when I go. Just the same thing every time.
Yep. So let's take a look at it. So give us an example. Pick up the ball for us. Show us what you do here. And you can dry off the right hand, obviously, and then switch the ball. It's going to go right up to the left hand. Now, it takes a little extra time, but not really a whole lot overall to get started. But this is definitely important for you because having both hands on the ball, you want to have the same feel, the same comfortable grip each time you get out there on the approach. So a great setup in the pre-shot routine. Anything else different that's unique to your particular style, or is it pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same.
From this point, you're on the approach and you're ready to go, right? Okay, so let's go take a look at what it looks like to get on the approach and go through the two-handed approach. Okay, so let's talk about the two-handed approach, and we've gone through the pre-shot routine. We're going to step up on the approach now, Anthony. Just kind of walk us through getting from that position into the setup, and let's see what it looks like here. What do you do when you're getting ready to set up on the approach?
As I go to set up, I just find where I want to stand, get my fingers in there, lay my hand across my thumb hole / weight hole, and just kind of get my left hand into a comfortable position.
Okay, so in this position, which is your stance, we got a couple of things that are real similar to traditional one-handed style already, but there's one thing really that's kind of different. The similarities are that your posture is slightly forward, your knees are going to stay flexed, your feet are going to have some separation at the bottom of in your stance, so you're going to have a lot of the same balance points. There's not a lot of difference. But when you set up, show me that setup again. Put your hand in the ball for me. You're going to set up without your thumb in the ball, you said, right? You're going to cover that hole you've got on the ball there. Show me what the opposite hand looks like when you set up, though. So the opposite hand is going to be slightly out in front, and it's going to cover more of the front side of the ball, not be underneath it so much, or on the bottom of it. Now, any particular place that you want to put this, left or right or front and back when you set up?
No, it's just kind of the same spot every time, and just let my right hand do what I need to do.
Okay, so you get the right hand comfortable, and then the opposite hand doesn't have a particular place. You're not trying to really set it in one particular spot. If you need to do something different with the ball motion, are you even going to try and adjust it then, or is it pretty much the same place every time?
It's going to stay the same place every time, and I'm just going to make right hand adjustments, and where I start and then where I finish at the line as well.
Okay, so right hand adjustments then. So you may adjust your hand to the side or underneath the ball slightly to change it a little bit? Okay, so a variation of that, and that may change where the opposite hand goes for balance, but overall, just the opposite hand being in a position that's going to help you get started is going to be how you get set up. And there's not going to be a lot of change in variation where that's going to go other than what your right hand does. So not a lot of variation when it comes to the overall mechanics. Some difference we see in the opposite hand position in the two-handed approach. So when you start or when you're working with somebody maybe to learn that style, be aware of where that opposite hand is. Make sure it's there in the same place each and every time. As he moves through the approach, we're going to see some variation in his posture. We're also going to see some changes in his footwork. In the setup, once again, we said everything is a little bit more traditional, with the opposite hand being the only difference. Once the ball gets into the start, his posture is going to lean forward. He's going to follow that arm swing as the opposite arm stays with the ball. So he's going to lean forward with his posture, and the opposite hand stays with the ball into the downswing and the top of the backswing. And as that pulls his posture forward, it changes his balance point. He gets more forward. His feet have to move faster to help support that extra tempo he's got going through there. So his footwork's going to pick up and get a lot quicker, which is going to give him better ball speed to match his higher rev rate. So as he gets into his approach and the posture goes forward, the feet are going to move quicker. He's going to get the backswing or the height of his backswing, which is not as high as a traditional one-handed player, only about as high as his shoulders. And as he continues into his downswing in the approach, his posture is going to be almost parallel with the approach whenever he gets to the step before his slide, or that slight quick step that he's got before his slide. And then in that last step, his posture is going to raise up slightly as his arm swing comes down, both arms come down, and both hands get to the bottom of the approach. His hand's going to be in a great position to be underneath the ball and create a lot more rev rate. Well, probably 20% more rev rate than we see in most traditional one-handed professional players. So we see two big differences, the posture change and the footwork tempo, to go along and complement what happens with a hand position, which is a higher rev rate on that hand position at the bottom of the swing. When Anthony finishes this swing, the ball comes through, his opposite hand comes away, the ball comes through. Now he's going to finish, his posture is going to come up slightly, he's going to post his shot by once again balancing himself on his opposite foot or his left foot. And he's going to follow through with his bowling hand and his bowling arm, just as you do with a traditional one-handed approach, right toward the pins and as the ball goes down the lane. So, two big differences. Obviously, posture, footwork are going to really work well to accommodate the ball speed needed to match that higher rev rate in a two-handed approach. Okay, so the myth of the two-handed approach player is that they deliver the ball with both hands, and that's not true. What we see here in the high-speed video is that when a two-handed approach player comes to the bottom of their swing, the opposite hand, in this case Anthony's left hand, comes off the ball before the ball is delivered onto the lane. So it's actually a two-handed approach with a one-handed delivery. Anthony's got the ability to not only throw two-handed, but he has a one-handed approach as well. And the differences in his one- and two-handed approach are going to be obviously the posture difference when his body's going through the approach and the footwork difference in the tempo, how fast or slow he goes. It's all going to come to the end of a hand position difference because his opposite hand's not there. But his one-handed approach still has a lot of the same characteristics as his two-handed. His balance is still over each of his steps as he takes it. His tempo is going to be a little bit slower from start to finish. And his arm swing and direction are going to be in line or straighter, and his backswing is going to be higher. And because he's got these pieces in his one-handed approach, he can actually deliver the ball very straight, and if he goes to his two-handed approach, he can actually hook it with a lot more rev rate and a lot more ball speed. So his traditional one-handed approach has some of the essence of what he does two-handed, but it's definitely a different version of what the ball's going to look like on the lane, as well as what he's going to look like in the finished position. It's going to have less rev rate, it's going to be straighter down the lane, and a lot of times he may use this for his spare shot. So the one-handed approach versus the two-handed approach may be able to come into play for different types of lane conditions and or spares versus strike shots.
So let's talk about ball motion and talk a little bit about you getting ready for an event. Whenever you're getting your arsenal together and you're at the event, you're actually getting ready to compete. You've got a higher ball speed, you've got a higher rev rate than most, so you're going to see the lanes differently than most people do. What are you looking for when you get started out there on the approaches? What kind of ball motions? What do you tend to use? What's your setup and what do you like to see?
I try to find the stuff that's going to be the smoothest down lane, keep me out of trouble when I do make errant shots.
So cover stocks, what do you like? What kind of cover stock do you see? Do you want it to be strong or weak, or what do you prefer?
I prefer the hybrid stuff with surface.
Okay.
Over the solid and the pearlized stuff. That's kind of the first thing out of my bag is something with the medium surface, 2000, 3000, medium cover stock ball, just in general, mid-range ball.
So just like anybody else, though, you got to go through the feel of the lane, kind of get an idea of where the lane's giving you friction, maybe where it's not. So you start to make your adjustments on the approaches, and that gives you an idea of where to start with whatever event you're in. So you get set up, you kind of got an idea of where you're starting. What about your adjustments or moves? Do you make basically like a 2-in-1 move when people traditionally do, or what do you do?
I mean, generally the only time I make 2-in-1 moves is if I'm having problems getting the corners out. I prefer to make 2-in-1 moves for that, just because my moves, being a two-hander, having a higher rev rate and higher ball speed, are generally bigger than everybody else's. Everybody else's 2-in-1 moves, mine are 4-in-2s and 5-in-3s. Right. Just tend to make bigger moves than everybody else.
So let's move on a little bit and talk about now, whenever you're in transition and you're moving through an event, if you start with a certain type of bowling ball, do you see yourself going or migrating to a particular type of cover stock or ball? Do you tend to go to one area of your arsenal, or is it kind of whatever the lane gives you?
For the most couple of times, if I'm ever really confused, I go to, there's a certain couple balls I go to that always seem to give me an idea.
Okay.
They may not be the right one, but however, they give me an idea of what I should be using and not get myself in trouble.
Gotcha. So they're more controllable. Maybe they're a little more smooth, they're predictable. Any particular layouts as far as maybe a pin up or down that does better for you or something like that?
Most everything, just the pin above the bridge.
Okay.
And just, I tend to stick with those. The ball doesn't do too much, and it's pretty predictable on anything.
Okay, good. So you definitely have a similar set of characteristics when it comes to the type of bowling balls. Now, as you move through your arsenal, you get down to the the end of tournaments where the lane maybe is transitioning, you get to that lane that's really dry, for your example, for you, because you're going to take a lot of oil off the lanes pretty quickly. So now the lanes are really dry. You've moved on the approaches pretty far to your left. What type of bowling ball or what type of look are you looking for now with that environment?
When I have to get that far left, most of the time I'm over the gutter.
Okay.
I try to stay with the same ball if it allows me to. If not, I try to go to something that's very, very similar,
Okay.
keep my layout similar, and just a different surface or a weaker shell.
Right. So example might be a urethane ball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you travel with urethane quite often?
Almost everything I bowl.
Almost everything you bowl, you got to have that option there. So you see that when it comes to the two-handed approach with those amped up styles as far as ball speed and rev rate, you definitely have to be prepared characteristically for the equipment you're going to use and for the type of adjustments you're going to make. So keep that in mind for those two-handed approach players out there, that you're going to need to make sure you're comfortable with that arsenal and make sure you've got it set up, ready to go, and you're ready to make those big moves when the lane tells you to. Okay, let's talk about spares. It's an important part of everybody's game, and there's a little bit of difference between a two-handed approach technique for spares and a one-handed. So, Anthony, real quickly, what do you do maybe in your particular approaches whenever you're trying to adjust for spare conversions?
I mean, just I have my little tricks to shoot certain spares, and for the basic stuff like shooting 10 pins, if I'm missing them one way because they're slick or they're dry, I make one little small 1-2 board adjustments.
Okay.
And keep the ball speed the same, just hard and straight at everything.
Okay, so ball speed is going to be a big factor when it comes to making spares. With the two-handed approach, you typically have faster ball speed. So when you make your spares, or when a lane pattern changes, like you said, they may get slick or they may get drier, do you adjust slightly one way or the other when you're adjusting for example, a 10-pin?
Slightly with my feet, I keep my target the same.
Okay.
Generally speaking, there's those times where you do have to make adjustments all across the board.
Right.
But other than that, it's just small movements with my feet.
Okay.
And just hard and straight at
Hard
it
and
again.
straight. You're going to change to a spare ball too, I think, is what you're going to use. Now, a one-handed traditional style versus a two-handed approach, they're going to have a different amount of boards they're going to move left and right whenever they're trying to adjust for their spares. Overall, the tempo and footwork of the two-handed approach is faster. You got your hand under the ball stronger, so you have a higher rev rate. You need more ball speed to do that. So when you're shooting spares, you're going to say even a little faster in your particular game, though, when you're shooting at them, as opposed to trying to slow down or keep the tempo regular. You're actually going to accelerate a little bit more.
I'm going to accelerate, make sure just because of the rev rate that I have on the ball.
Yep.
If I don't keep my ball speed up, however, it is plastic. If we're bowling on a 40-foot pattern, it's still 20 feet for my ball to hook, so I've got to get it through it.
Yep. Okay, so definitely the lane pattern is going to make a difference when it comes to identifying where you're going to shoot your spares. Now you mentioned 1 or 2 little tricks in there. Are the tricks just simply foot movements left and right with your footwork, or is there anything you're doing with your hands differently?
The tricks are only on certain spare combinations. For instance, the 3, 6, 9, 10.
Okay.
I shoot those two-handed.
Yep.
And I just throw them over the gutter and get the ball to roll out. That way it covers the 9-pin.
Great.
When I shoot the 310, I'm the same way. I just feel like I've got a bigger angle, so I have more miss room.
Excellent.
To where if I miss right, the ball's going to deflect. If I miss left, the pin's going to deflect into the 10-pin.
In the 10-pin. So definitely with the different combinations of pins out there, you're going to have multiple ways to attack it. When the lane pattern changes, you're going to need to do the same thing, make an adjustment in one way or the other. It sounds like using the spare ball, though, maybe picking up the speed a little bit, it's going to be what works mostly for maybe the two-handed approach. So keep that in mind when you're out there. Traditional one-handed or two-handed approach, make sure you're doing the right things to pick up more spares.